다들 그래 아래 케마 캐시마 선아도 대제면의 그주기 순주차你们他们的一不是
This morning, we have the last day of teaching for the Arya Chema Winter Dharma Gathering. First of all, I'd like to say that this teaching, I have not been able to give the teaching as I would have liked to. So first of all, I would like to beg everyone's pardon. And so today I would like to speak about the rest of the preparatory dharmas. We've already discussed up through confessions, so we will discuss the remaining ones.
제가 뒤숨 유튜브에 개와 잡아보 탐재기 소나무를 지수 이런 건데 대한 레벨을 초 탐재도 좀 상게 빠르면 장원에 대한 성격이 맞다 탐재기에 담보 쳐주셔도 심게 버려서 소나무는 이상 저번은 장에 아무래도 상 마제기 받기 개에서 강라바 상계를 담배 쪽이 걸어고 유전은 미버진 요소 양에는 되게 받기 개에서 강라바 양엘이 되는 tempo machine 받기 개에서 강라바 대다가 벌교 수주스 무슨이 쳐받는 개에서 강라바 파바란상에 신이 쳐받는 개에서 강라바 파바니도 신이 쳐받는 개에서 강라바 소수 기원은 개에서 강라바 대다 탐지를 제수 이런 기원이 조화 공부하고 대신도 다다르다 마음병 대다게 개와나 대신도 잘 제수 이런 공부하고 대다량 껴받는 게 천주도 상계사 개세사라 이런 셰발라서 송소 제수 이런 셰스인도
Rejoicing in virtue is about the need to cultivate a joyous appreciation of all the virtuous actions of sentient beings throughout the three times, thinking, I delight in all the roots of virtue established by every one of the limitless, inconceivable, enlightened beings who have appeared in the past throughout the universe from their first generation of bodhicitta all the way to their perfect awakening due to their amassing the two accumulations and purifying the two obscurations. I further delight in whatever roots of virtue have been produced subsequent to their enlightenment, from the time they turned the wheel of Dharma to bring to maturity those ready for instruction until they manifested leaving the world of suffering. I also delight in the roots of virtue generated by their teachings between their parinirvana and the eventual disappearance of the teaching, as well as in the virtue produced by whatever bodhisattvas have appeared in the interim before the manifestation of the and by the manifestation of the following Buddha. I further delight in whatever roots of virtue have been produced by the accomplished Prateka Buddhas and likewise by those of any Shravakas who have appeared. Further, I delight in the roots of virtue generated by ordinary people. By contemplating joyfully in the above way, cultivate appreciation. Likewise, nurture similar thoughts about virtuous actions being performed in the present moment and those that will be performed in the future. In each instance, the training is to cultivate joyous appreciation. As it is said, I delight in the enlightenment of all the saviors and in the levels of the conqueror's heirs as well.
최미송하고 예도 대다를 미니 최송을 주원비와 대다량 처럼 그게 상계라 태모자를 소하는 심지동 동에 문톰라 최기되면 빠르도스 최기되면다 빠르도스 세송로 양엘의 미도를 소한데만 다다량 최준지딩 감나야 양 감나야 상계다 딱버렸다고는 순용왕 레로진 주주계의 실 양엘의 다카마마고 예대 대달의 미라 양엘의 미저 소한되고 대달이야 야와 양엘 다시라 태모자의 소한 안전 동벌 민주시 개발 장외 쇼부 주시에 소소 귀시 소한되고 시에신도 개회장 원에 나르지 개회장 대다 심진 탐지 동에 사실 개발 주비 규르지 거는 대달이야 대달은 대다 군지의 개와 당의 싸워 뒤는 심진 탐지기 동에 탐지 싸워쇼 제발로서 송소 대달은 뭐와 차대 대인식이 저의 총아 시에신도
Requesting that the wheel of Dharma be turned, it means that even at this moment in all the worlds of the 10 directions, there are many Buddhas not teaching the Dharma. Addressing them mentally, offer requests to them to teach the Dharma. Thus one reads, with hands joined, I beseech the Buddhas throughout the 10 directions. Please light the torch of Dharma for all beings obscured in the darkness of suffering. Supplicating the Buddhas not to pass away from the suffering worlds. At present, there are Buddhas in the worlds of the 10 directions who are at the point of entering into ultimate nirvana, in order to stimulate those who believe in permanence to abandon their misconceptions and to inspire diligence in those who are wasting their time. With these Buddhas in mind, supplication is made to them not to pass beyond the suffering worlds. I pray with joined hands to those victors who are considering passing beyond to nirvana to remain for countless ages, so as not to leave all their beings in obscurity. Dedicating the roots of virtue. All these previous roots of virtue are dedicated to removing the sufferings of all beings and as a cause of their achieving happiness. Having thus engaged in all such deeds, whatever virtues I may have gathered, may this help clear away the sufferings of all beings. This and what precedes it conclude the explanation of the preparatory stage of the Bodhisattva ceremony. So that completes the discussion of the preparatory dharmas. Now there's the discussion of the actual practices next, but we will save that for later. This 9th chapter of the Ornament of Precious Liberation is the longest of its chapters.
Wula shume kenza zhesha jenza da da kondu jiga jesu irang da jenza da fangu de liya jesu irang go liya da meshi ta gen na lo da sebo ji yong de yare adrin justane tena shima do ge ye de liya ma bu ji de xie sa ba gas ke mi do.
So, to speak about the subject of rejoicing, actually the words in the Ornament of Precious Liberation themselves are really extremely clear. And I don't feel like I really have any new and different explanations that I can give in addition to that.
야와 탐제 진짜 상계체 되네 제세 천주선바 되는 장계 년들 로버던 다 밀로베 년들 되네 람도 머슈벤 좋아 대단도나 가서 대행하는 나가야는 뭐디바 이다 심지에 매비 뉴스안다 제수이란 체유대 가상아 샤나이 그래.
Now in the question So the beings whose virtue we rejoice in are the 5 different types of individuals, it said. So these 5 different types of individuals include all of the victors of the 10 directions, which means the Buddhas, all of their children, which means the Bodhisattvas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, and then those listeners who are on the disciples who are on the paths of no more learning and on the paths of learning, as well as all individuals who have not yet entered the paths. So within these 5 categories, there are no individuals who are not included. This way we're rejoicing in everyone's virtue. So these are the 5 categories of beings for whom we rejoice. And so this is similar to the verse from the Noble Aspiration for Excellent Conduct, which says, I rejoice in all the virtues of the Buddhas, the self-Buddhas, the listeners, and all the sentient beings. This includes all of the 5 categories as well.
다 제주이랑 뮤서디, 무슨 제주이랑 뮤서디, 다 공도셰베, 이제 제 가수라다 강사 대다기 뒤순도 사베, 다제 가수라, 소나미 공부선한 장도 개와 지 이동와 다 되게 상황로래야 제주이랑 뮤
Now, what we rejoice in is all of the accumulations of merit. That is, all of their virtue, everything attractive that those 5 types of individuals have done in the 3 times.
롬심다. 되는 차도 매배 거네. 다 우부 때리니봐. 야나 미도라 세트해버시. 미도발이야. 세트해버는시. 되게 인타버네. 가와곰. 되는다 제수이랑 그거 예비인데.
And so the manner in which we rejoice is that when we think of the virtues of all those sentient beings, we have no pride, no conceit, no envy. And we offer rejoicing in this way, or we do this in a non-conceptual way, a way free of thought, and we rejoice in everything they have done.
수수기 ngar 사샤베기 제 개와드서 자지레 폐기여비임라.
Now the virtues of rejoicing in this way is, first of all, that the virtue that we have each done in the past is increased greatly. And when you rejoice in the acts of someone who has an equal level of realization as yourself, so if that person you're rejoicing for has the same level of realization as you have, then you also have the equal benefits as that person. And if you rejoice in the deeds of people who are either higher in realization or who have lesser realization, though you may not have equal amounts of benefit from it, you will certainly gain benefit, and it will be a vast benefit. And when you rejoice in the virtue of those who are either lesser or greater realization, then you gain more merit than you do through your own acts.
gebe da gendo yuga chi yoba songre tene du san ti ju zen den da jesu yirang wa buya de da thapke che ju zen thapke ge nyamne ya da me du chungwa ro chi de jin ba songla.
The function of rejoicing is that it becomes a future that becomes a condition that in the future you will be inspired or you'll be excited about committing virtuous deeds. And so in this way, for these reasons, making an offering of rejoicing is one of the Bodhisattva's amazing skillful practices.
다 지난게 상계의 진주 선반남게 다 가르쳐야지 현대 제베 추이 남다 따섬게 미겨야 돼 그래. 배나 다 주신 배나 배준 좀 쉬빈 다 섬게 미겨야 되는데 배준 좀 쉬야 마도 배게 예바 쉬도 말봐. 다 배준 좀 쉬비미나 까마보 군진이 봐 주신 까마 버시 구르지 딱 구르지 다 간다. 다 송구르 세나면도 다 간다 공기 바 잠난지 지제지야래 디 나로라 공기다 수진기 민조와 반 뒤야래 수미게 한드디와 마요스 저다 수미게 한드 망고지 아주 여기 미게 통살래야 안 뒤지게 야버데 아주 하고 통과 다이미네야 안에 다지 주바탑에 가사디 주기 아주 여기 통난을 예배 두자 대점도 마세베 아주 통난도 뭐 교버스난다도 아주 통미도 베다 간다 미다 미마이 다가다 미마이 두자 다다 루단 다가다 가리나 뉴진이나 간다 진제가 두자 망고지 뒤도 야래 재산 디규센 때는 상계의 전수 선반남기 아란수 밀럼도야 민가에 다지 현대 라부치 저기야 대종 아주 이라베 셋업네 그저를 제수기랑 비고
In general, the way that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bring benefit to other sentient beings is inconceivable. And so, because it's inconceivable, we can really only think about analogies or examples of it. We cannot conceive of their entire activity. For example, if we think about the second Karmapa, the great Mahasiddha Karmapakji, there was a song, or maybe it wasn't a song, perhaps it was just a verse. In any case, in this verse it said, he said that even more numerous than the physical disciples or the visible disciples whom he tamed were the formless, those non-physical beings. So these are formless beings whom we are unable to see, and he was able to tame them all. So there are all the disciples that he tamed who are visible to us, but those who are invisible to us, those who we cannot see, including the non-human spirits, gods, nagas, rakshasas, and various, were even more numerous for him. And so in this way, the activity of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is something that it really even surpasses what we can conceive of in our dreams.
ene koala shemba bangachi diji yoni yara da le la baji zawani chagyo mare da kanda ko thoma mene da kanda diji jebe da kanda biji kumji su jude diji gi da kanda ji siba korwegi ji da kanda koala shembe chingta jeje dege da kanda ninjum samba gyulike deba dizul yang aje 야 지기 뭐 차로다 매도 주에 두시 개베 돈에 근데 소리야 제수이랑 비고 예비bre.
And also, there is the really intense wish for liberation of the listeners and the Pratyeka Buddhas. And so they have been able to loosen the bonds that bind us to samsara, that we have been habituated to since beginningless samsara. And by that, they have reduced their desire, or they have eliminated their fixation on samsara. This is not at all easy to do, because these are habits that we have been grown accustomed to from beginningless samsara. And so to be able to loosen the bonds of fixation on samsara and existence is really something that is incredible and amazing. And so we should conceive of this as being amazing and wondrous and rejoice in this.
수수기우 다 간다 탐해봐 대수기야 다 간다지 녀몽베베 칭원군의 된데베서나라도 간다베 녀몽베 오늘 전에 다 간다 지 야식 야탐버서 뭐르다 니지기베 컨트롤 체제에서 뭐르다 간다 녀몽베 칭외 탐도 베 차샤시 용조를 봐 담데베 된제게 수수기우 탐지기야 간다지 대술라야 지 계획 삼바 지게외 삼바 랍싱이 지게외 삼바 다들게 예베데 지 시도 원사르네 두스 차디어레스 드네미 주사네 안주게 풍부수배는 더 나눠려야 아니 세컨직서 게외서 강라바타스 수문은 신기 다지 심지 주리스 주베질 세컨부강 와도 마제비네 디엔드비 지게와텔이네 당아주 제수이랑 차외베지다 나버지에 버는 차디어레스.
Now, ordinary sentient beings have all of the bonds and all of the fetters of the afflictions. It's like they're 100% under the control of the afflictions, as if they're all of their parts of their being have been bound by the fetters of the afflictions. So, for such an ordinary being to have a virtuous thought, much less a vast virtuous thought, is just incredible and amazing. So this is the reason why in the sutra in 3 sections, the confession practice, it says that we rejoice in even giving a morsel of food to animals. And so if even just giving a small morsel, a bite of food to an animal, if someone has the thought of doing that, it is an amazing thing, and so we should rejoice and delight in it.
이제 제비나 다 이랑 콜로스나다도 가와 콜로는 또 사대요래.
And so actually all of the virtues are as vast as the sky. The virtues of all beings are as vast as the sky. They're very numerous, and so these are what we should rejoice in. But if we have an enemy who is in pain or in suffering, if we then rejoice in that, that is what we call mistaken rejoicing or mistaken delight. Now there's a story that illustrates this. It is about the king Prasenajit, and it is from the time of the Buddha. And so King Prasenajit was giving offerings to the Buddha and his entourage, his retinue, for 7 days.
다 주의 셀라로 그 인사래. 다 셀라 피주산에 오늘 저 루스에 들려다가 셀라 핑긴 뭐죠? 뭐지 두산한테 상계기 개버세게 라거드 나체. 엔 저랑게 선생기 개와 중견들 뭐와치기 인다 하나다지 개와 자신 보성으로 상계들이야 뭐와치기 지가를 나.
And so the offering was primarily offering meals. Now, the custom at that time was to dedicate the virtue at the end of the meal. And so the Buddha asked King Prasenajit, should I make the dedication on behalf of the person who has made the most material offering, or should I make it on the behalf of the person who has the most vast merit?
Gebo sege oda sonam jashawa gewa jashawa so in telang owan zero chis shudu zane dene ni ngama ni ta chugirin liya ta ni gyundus sonyo pyo be indus zane kela pyo be ni chugirin liya ana sange ki ngwa samalo ta gimuji marwa ta tenda tijigi gimuji liya ane 민도안에 딱 간다 드리지 와 제브레스 마도 개버사게게 센된 와제요.
Now when he heard this, King Prasenajit said, "Oh, you should make the offering to whomever has the greatest merit." And so the Buddha then, for the first 6 days, there are 7 days of offering the meals, and so for the first 6 days, when the Buddha made the dedication, he made the dedication to an old woman who was there, and he did not mention King Prasenajit by name.
셀라데 개버세게 퓨 뭐데 다 미신다질 제주스 다들 lumbu디스 베 심제총 다 느제 가와용 거랬지 셀랑아 주 병화 신다지 때 자원이 용말 디디 가래는 미디 제다 제제 한다디 상기 뭐한지 미디 봐 제제 다디 오라 데다 델리아 제수이랑 차기 가서라 제수이랑 차 바르제를 치지 제 셈이 인도 쪽 나, 셈이 인도 쪽네 제수이랑 차기 다저 바르제를 쳐야 되지 제가 니마 타마텔이야 네 제수이랑 이 상계는 용화제스데 바르제제 꼴 제수이랑 차 가서다지 셈이 인도 쪽이 다 델리아지 이 탑시 가시 땅을 기시해 오르다 딱 한 달이랑 소라지 제수이랑 뮤야가야지 뮤야게 가서다 바르제지 셈이 인도 쪽으로 셈 시엔도 인도 쪽 안 디니 모델 신의 안 상계기 개워세게라야 뭐 남았어.
And so every day the dedication was given to someone else, and King Prasenajit was not mentioned. And so the ministers, King Prasenajit's ministers, worried about this. It's like, how can this be? King Prasenajit has given this wonderful food for all this time, and he's not being mentioned as having the greatest merit. So they looked for the old woman whom the Buddha had mentioned, and then they decided to make problems for her, prevent her from rejoicing. They decided to distract her and keep her from rejoicing. And so on that last day, they found her, and then when the Buddha was about to make and they distracted her the whole time. They made her think about other things. They did various things to take her mind off, to distract her mind elsewhere, and prevented her from rejoicing. And so on that day, only on that day, did the Buddha actually mention King Prasenajit and dedicate the virtue to King Prasenajit.
나는 신기 상계기 개워세게리야 나 저랑 개워레스 나 개워 인자 저와 사오여 난 저와 사오여 인주사는 진번에 시럽이 버르듯이메 바가다 버르진 도대대 야참으로 교란지 럽정 제도 말했어 나 이내 교란게 제수이란데 라시 탐지게 밖에 개워서 제수이란 야고치 제수이란 야고치지 제수이란 집에 개워서 야사다 제벌이야. 피. 디 심제 탐제라 ngoachen de chebina an yoran mangobala 상기가 유르지지. 딱한다 개부 세계라 지다 냠내 차로디 조디 제수이랑디 냠내 차디. ane 상기가 나가이 봐.
And so the Buddha is then said to King Prasenajit that you are a king, so since you are a king, you can't really do a lot of the practices. You are able to do, you're able to be generous, but it's difficult for you to practice the others.
No. From the generate paramita until the wisdom paramita, you can't practice large scale.
Okay, so the king, he said to King Prasenajit that you were unable to do the practices of the paramitas, from the paramita of generosity through the other paramitas. You can't do these vast ways of accumulating virtue, but you are able to rejoice. And so if you rejoice, if when you see someone else doing virtue and you rejoice in this, and then if you offer the rejoicing to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and dedicate it to the benefit of all sentient beings, then in the future this will lead to you becoming Buddha. And so in this way, the Buddha gave King Prasenajit as his primary practice, the practice of rejoicing. And so when we rejoice, then naturally this makes our own minds joyful and happy. It naturally makes us enthusiastic. And so for that reason, when the rejoicing is like a naturally and spontaneously present treasury, a wealth that we have, that is present within us.
ane 장부지 추부지기 감배 건람이야 장부지 알아서 ane 다 추부디 가두이네 니마 딱바디 장부디 통디 알아 제자한테는 장부디 공다 딱바르시 고다 실로리아 돌롱같이 난래 공다 딱바르고 시에당시 기부제 데데 알아서 추부디 안 감배나 공다야 레스 때는 장가게 장가게 알아봐 중송 다 좋은 가래도 송 가래다 다선이 간데 시사로지 진짜 경야지 가수에 샘제를 다는 진짜 차와 경야 체제 되게 알았어 님의질이야 추부고 삼루시고 아 추분 드리지 그래서 벤조 론준 드리지 해야 돼 이내야 은혜지 이 장분들 도움이 됐다 장분들 강가 사야 거야 yela mela rubje de inea khode semba kimdo khashustos jezanta nga normal mud gazre de semba jibusham jezanta de tangji chego de gar chemina samje ko taji chego do sam tabre.
So I think if I tell a story about this, it'll be easy for everyone to understand. This is actually a story I've told many times. So once there was a beggar, and the beggar lived nearby the gates, nearby the door of a rich person's house. And so every day this rich person would see the beggar, and every evening the beggar would come back from his begging rounds and relax, sing songs, and enjoy himself. But the rich man would come home every evening, count his pennies, he would count his money, he would tally his income and expenses for the day, figure out what he needed to do, and spent his entire time worrying and being busy. So one day the rich person thought to himself, what's this about? I'm rich, I've got a lot of money, but that beggar seems even happier than I am. That beggar doesn't have anything, but he seems really happy. And I have all this wealth, but I'm not nearly as happy. So I've got to figure out what is happening.
Ryan was that, Rang was and Luke was and Jabamita. Rag was a Luke was that, and I said Chamboji, Koran, the Tango de Sha, this the Shasha. That Chamboji is a rank with a Kalaka.
So he thought, I've got to figure out a method, and
billionaire in a Hakumdo.
I got to figure out some way to figure this out. And so one day when the beggar went out, he took a big piece of gold, about the size of a goat's head. Maybe a goat's head, maybe a sheep's head, I don't know. It's not much of a difference between the two. In any case, he took this big piece of gold the size of a goat's head and left it inside the beggar's house. So I don't know if he was a millionaire or maybe a billionaire or what.
He said the dish had tea on that the tongue was Sulen. That Koran doesn't non oh, yeah, that there, Sir Wishim Jim to charge or 7 total. That couldn't depend on Regina. Tambo Harish ledge. This thing is a Sir Young Demel, Sir Len. That sent the Kang button you give us a third of that, said the Cadenas, and this dead ends. That way, I'm just some Logita or Chichen and Mission Dachigi. Said, the Harmons, Langal, said, the party with the some of the Angitan. Uncle Samajita, oh, Chichen and Jobo Yinza. A good job, 2G scene. That you're not over in those Cheche, and a good job about 7 the day would have not matters. The day in the tongue when the sunny said the parts on che, I could come back to the Mang with sometimes take jelly chick to some down. Jake some down of tea on that, the quick some dance. She means you stand that could she had to Jesuits.
So after the rich guy left the big piece of gold the big nugget of gold in the poor guy's house, the beggar came back and he saw this huge piece of gold glittering and glistening with a light, and he's like, how did that get there? What's this piece of gold doing there? How is it that there's some sort of gold? How did the gold get into my house? Is this really gold in my house? What happened? He looked around and he tried to figure out where could I have got this gold? And he started thinking about how did this get here? And he thought to himself, oh, maybe someone lost it. They lost it on the way and they're going to come back looking for it or something. And he started worrying about that. Then he maybe started thinking, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's because the 3 jewels know that I'm so poor and they've bestowed this gift of this city, this gift upon me. And then he started thinking, oh, I should sell it. And then I can build a house. And then just one thought led to the next that led to the next thought. And he spent the entire evening thinking about things. And he was thinking about planning things so much that he forgot to sing any songs.
Reactions, Numjuru Carden, that Tigonda, Numjutawarish, Shetan, Tigonda, Shetan, the Yomara, Shetangama. That Chubuti, Shineji, or that Nengadi, Teredo, something, Nengachi Happers.
So the rich person was watching this. He was looking down to see what the reaction of the beggar would be to finding the gold. So usually the beggar would be singing songs by now, but he wasn't that evening. And so then the rich person realized, this is the point. This is what it's about.
지 참상아주 남도 망부 세제지 아주 디기 토야량아주 다지 오늘은 디기 있어야 돼 깔아 하버지 녀도 사버지 들지 참참 오늘 딘지지 뭐 임바체 디기 있어야 돼 제래라 더블요 안다지 수수 삼로 당초 중세성기 딱한데 다 디기 유메 개발차도 수용되어라 바바라도 셈리야지 초세바다 제수 이랑에 삼바로지 개베이미나 랑긴 안기 지 셈리야 디기 소에 대하지나 조낭 소용돼 알으시더니 용도와 마도 인지미지 딱 한다지 규망어지에비나 디기 용배 개바야 말에 강바침부지에비나 디기 뭐 예배 개바야 말에 다 다나지 초보망어지에나 디기 용 개바야 말 단도나지 시응어보다 다지 상승기 다지 벤처로 지점시에비나 디기 용토에 제제 다지 가렌티 섬으로 다지 간다라 델리아베 가서해 걔네 지다 저 타주 셔야 알아가고 싶어 다 이민의 셈리야 초식 좋아 아니 제수이라면 좋아 근데 직딩 사모를 줘야비나 아니 랑킹 안기 юм제메 섬으로 다 юм제에도 여러 번 있네 다지 초전에 시험은다 юм제 겐시라 치주기 겐다 신다 시달 되마고 치지 랑킹 안기 근데 이 소화를 줘야지 용거래 삼특이요
Now, what happened with the gold next day, I don't know. Whether the rich guy went to go take it back or if he gave it to the beggar, I just don't know what happened. At any rate, what this means, or what this shows, is that if we have a lot of thoughts, then if we think too much, then it's difficult to be happy and joyful. Happiness and joy is not something that's difficult or complex. It's something that's actually quite easy and simple. And we just have to think about it a little bit. We have to be able to distinguish whether or not something is whether or not we are happy. And so, if we have few desires, if we are content with what we have, and if we rejoice, then just automatically, naturally, we'll have this great feeling of happiness and joy and delight. So, it's not necessarily so that being rich will bring you happiness. It's not necessarily so that having a house or having friends will definitely bring you happiness. External things and material things are no guarantee that we will become happy. But if within our minds we have this contentment with what we have and rejoice in things, then that will naturally and automatically, without any reason, that is to say, without any external, not depending upon any external causes, we will naturally become happy.
다 냥에는 믿어 소한데부디 안도 düzem 쉬는 점으로
And so now we've completed this discussion of rejoicing, and so next I will speak in brief about the request to turn the wheel of Dharma and the request not to pass to Nirvana.
얼마시 가장 쉬변한 신기 다간다 최봉게 골이야 가장 최봉 골 쉬변한 신기 다음도나 아주 주더 미지바 벨이야지 주더 미지바 지 유바 미지바 근데 지 도스도스 민다로 용데 알아데 안 된기 차려야 아니 상황 자외 때문에 그 유튜브 선한 다로 드네미 인두산에 난 될래야 차단의 초리 권에 지 연제 당 아니 계속 미지바 어디 계속 뭐 자대요.
As I discussed yesterday when speaking about rejecting the Dharma, there are some slight differences in the in the tenets in the way of practicing in the various Tibetan schools. But in actuality, all of them are essentially the same. They all have essentially the same meaning. And so for this reason, it is important for us not to look at them with a bias of attachment or aversion, or to denigrate or to ignore any of them. The first Gyalwan Rinpoche, that is the first Dalai Lama, Gendun Druk, said in a song that these days there are many people who call themselves upholders of the teachings and yet consider their main enemies other upholders of the teachings, and this is very distressing. So the meaning of that is that these days in Tibet, there are many people who say of themselves, I uphold the teachings, I am a master and a holder of the teachings. And yet when they consider who their primary enemies are, they say that their primary enemies are other people who uphold the teachings, and then they have conflict with them. Seeing this, it's a very distressing point, an upsetting and distressing situation.
또 조가던비 이제 템포 주시 남도 키워가지고 예수 템포 주시 남도 키워서 템포 주시 남도 키워서 될 리시 야당 망고 연대도 다 이변이야 다또 마시 주시 남도 키워서 초진의 주시 남들 사데 또나 템포 탐지엘래 초다 리수 맞제베 체제 근데 제 주시 저진비나 되게 초타다네 야 짜지 근데 체제는 딱 한다 냠내시하지 들리지리야 고마시에 유스라 삼정도 가르레사나 조지 더지기 좀데 말이야 안 캐나즈 배바디 탐지 연락했어 안에 배지 말했어 단 내딘비 대바다 몽그룹에 대바야 안 야가는 주된 레슈스 근데 쟤네 간다 대바시가 쪼고 대화시가 주지 템포 주시 남도 키워지 근데지고 레스지 근데 간난도가 단도라지 간다 조지 라지기 비그만 실레 줄라한리아 슈베 겁리아 대화 탐지기 공리아 지 지구르치 대화 탐지기 간다 예 개발면 공 지구르시고 가래서는 공기 딱 공부시다는데 템포 지다 안지 추리면 근데 공부시에 인상 비그람 실레 줄라한리아 아니 대화 탐지기 구르셔서 늦지레스 좀 봐.
So the master, the great Atisha, the master, the founder of the Kadampa tradition, once said that we need to practice taking the four sides of the teachings of the path as the path. Now there are many different explanations of what this taking the four sides of the teaching as the path mean. But I think that one way of looking at it is that we can say that it's like thinking of all of the different parts of the teachings without any bias. And considering them all to be parts of the teachers. It's like if there is a large square or a rectangle of fabric, and if everyone picks it up from all sides, then we are able to lift it up. So my thought is this is what this text means. Now, the reason for saying this is that once Atisha said to his student Tromtumpa, all of you here are in the Mula Sarvastivada tradition. I'm from the Dharmagupta. I'm from the Mahasangika. It would be good for you to invite masters of the Theravada and the Dharmaguptaka traditions. It'd be good for you to invite masters from the Theravada and the Mankurwa tradition to Tibet, because in this way you can have the four main schools of the teachings all founded well in Tibet, and in this way you will be able to practice, or you'll be able to practice taking all four sides of the teachings. Now, the reason he said this is that in Vikramashila, in the monastic university of Vikramashila, all of the schools of Buddhism treat each other with mutual respect, and so in thinking in this way, Atisha thought about taking the teachings in general and benefiting the teachings in general without any bias. And this is because in Vikramashila, in the Vikramashila temple, there were all four schools.
다 고대에 체. 다 참서 배샤는 고대를 루지서 카르 루도와 조카 고카르 루도. 제자 참선 배디 퇴연의 배차. 다디 디즈 가르에 편도시라요. 다연의 배차. 배는 상기雄버지 상기 뇌제 첨부지. 배는 하양르지. 상가 하양 첨부지지. 디기 나로로 오마 디가 루. 다 오마 루네 출루네 겸도다. 다 오마 센티스 야르면 오마 대가 루. 다 지오 오마 대가 루샤나. 다 제바면 오마 대가 루네. 다디 야격주산 미식이 짜고야 지어라서. 하한데 지중디. 다디나 오마 루쇼. 미식이 짜연주산 미시 디 소소소소 어떤 아주 냠도 가서 초 간에 잡에 멀리 베체 야 짜고래 사마기 되게 눈바 치지지 거라서 미시부터 알아 사무 동다 되지 거라서 다초 간에 마 룩선 류선에 지금 말에 삼버지 다 되지 사무지 코고라서 미시부터 마다 야지 초지 미되게 땅에 드는 야 다시 짜시 현다들 보나 보 제바 메사나 아니 상가나 유요 오마데 보도로 마다 코란디 지불 하데 말와 아니 상가나 오마 차상 보도로 그래 드네 되는 신기 아니 상기 때문에 해야돼 딱 안다지 더디 상첨보하고 딱 뇌 신변나는 오마로 받는 신기 상기 때문에 지금 다 가지고 다시 지 상기 때문에 해야지 아주 삼다 다 드네 미식이 야자는 사람 다들 소소 데스데스 좀 담는다지 기범이라 땅 아주 들려와래 다디 미식 그렇지 이내 아주 사무동단디 진짜게 다 초간에장 상기 때문에 초간에장 냠나 저 말에 삼버지 진짜게 다 동수 찍지는 버지고 그랬어 대매나 냠야데 선이지 냠서 상기 때문에 냠으로 마도베 아니 아직 고주 가서해 고주대 냠 아주대 마냠사지 그죠 아마 상기 때문에 비치고 그래 그래서 디균자한테는 다 진짜게 하나 동수 찍지 삼바 찍규로 템바 rumbushiliya 제대로 체베지 삼바 찍규로 든지 고래 든지 총부임에 신내지 템바 주실람도 캐와서나 장도 다나지 상계기 템바 집어서나 장도 다 든지 천대는 좀 돼야지 이제 삼trăm
So I'm going to make a comparison here, and sometimes, the comparisons are to make it easy to understand, but sometimes actually the comparisons make it more difficult to understand. You can't tell what's being compared to what, or what the meaning of it is. In any case, here the comparison is if you have a big vat, a big copper vat, and you fill it with milk. You could say water, but it's nicer to say milk. Maybe you could even say yak milk, or the female milk, the dri milk. In any case, it's filled with milk. So this big copper vat, and if you want to lift it up, then you need 4 people to lift it up, because it's so big. So you have to have 4 people who lift it up all together. So they all combine their powers, combine their strength into one, and they lift it up cooperating with each other. And if you do that, then you'll be able to lift up the vat. If any one of the people is unable to lift to carry their side, to lift their side, then you won't be able to lift the vat without spilling the milk. Also, if there's one person who says, "I'm strong, I can lift this entire thing on my own," then that one person will lift their side, and the other sides will droop, and all of them will drop, and all of this milk will spill out of the copper vat. So it's the same way with the teachings of the Buddha. It's like it's a large vat. And if we're going to lift it up and hold it up, then we have to all do it together, and we all have to cooperate. And it's like, so there are 4 people lifting it, and there are all, of course, slight differences in the way we're lifting it, and in the way they're lifting it, and the way that in their lineages and so forth. But they need to think. The way that we need to think is that we all have to lift this together. If anyone thinks I can do it on my own, then and do whatever I want, then that is not okay, because all of the milk will spill. And so it's like this way. If we just hold up our one thing and not worry about the others, if the other schools disappear, then what's disappearing is Buddhism. Buddhism is what's disappearing. It's the cause of Buddhism being weakened if we only think about our own side. It's not just one side or the other. It's Buddhism in general that will be weakened. So for that reason, we need to gather all of our strengths together and cooperate in lifting the vessel of Buddhism together. We need to think of it in this way. And I think only once we begin to think of it this way will we be able to understand what it means to practice taking the 4 sides of Buddhism as the past, or I think that is what it will mean to become an authentic upholder of the teachings.
이제 개모노야를 다 개모 맛이 삼서 개모쇼로 지금도 아니 개모노야 치도 개모쇼 시에도사 아니 개모쇼로 맞을 때 셈도 미주쇼 니 야부 먹고지 자 다들 점점 다들이야 남유영 아주 서로 다들 소소소 주기 소소소디 오늘네 템베 님부 아다 템베 님부 다가 간다르 집에 창라 만으로 템베 님부 단디 코나 템베 님부 인신다데 시다 마르 돈도 지시거로 그래서 뭐만 되지요래 미지기 마시디 디기 기루기 디지레다 죽으지다 죽고 기라심지다 대체 쉬모고자 다 기봉아몽아메 그랬다 안디사마다 제가 엄마 드리저자 공기 다세 당하랬다 다세다 다 템베닝부 다 템베닝부 가서기 아니베 추규디 템베닝부 인스라다 교랑 추규 뭐종의 공도 템베닝부 매하다 교랑 템베닝부 임비치 드리지게 배 다세 당하랬어 제가 다 디소르지 다간다 아주 놈 유인지 수수수에게 다지 주다다 추규기 체완되면 걸려야 당 오늘 지내기 치기 지고요래 되나야 오늘 지내가 딱 안다지 지 상기 때문에 냠내 차상화데 아니 뭐기 계속 담보수에게 다 리리 도도는 수에세 아니 아주 여기 라골래야 딱 안다지 지 가서다지 상기 락장 제초가 서버 상기 락베 누스파 아니 번진 제초가 근데 지기 간당 안 소리야베 당화 창라 만호와 간다 리리 도도시지 안아주로 나야래 대응원의 시합에는 아주 오늘 상월로 뽑아게 버지다 제수이랑 게버지래 나 이메네야 아 될라 때네 안 지된 게 차단을 치지 아 맞춰도 교회 고소 가 말했어 그래 차단 견 들어 말아 다들 지 상기 때문에 상라만 수술하면 안 돼야 돼 수술 유기 녀모 시에 체도 아니 수술하발라 충분히 인주사네 다디 녀모시에 터서 로트버지 고고로 마도 딜라발레는 녀모처처 진소나 되네 배사로 아들이 인주사네 디균센 되네 나 다들 얘기 지금 아주 가서 삼로 양다 하버지 리버 동과야 돼 개침버지 있어.
And so for that reason, we need to think of acting collectively, have the collective will to work together, to cooperate, and it's very important to have this. So I'm going to tell another story, and if I tell a story and you don't, and you're supposed to laugh at this one, and if you don't laugh, then I'm going to get very sad. I might even cry. It's very depressing. Actually, I'm just joking on that. But at any rate, usually when we talk about our different lineages, we all...
Yesterday, there are not many sort of Westerners. They're laughing. I'm disappointed. This is your fault,
yes.
my fault, other people's fault. That's okay. Joking.
So usually we say, of our own lineages, that this is the essence of the teaching. This is the real essence of it. It contains the entire teachings. And then we begin to think of this, that it's only our lineage that has the essence of the teachings, and other lineages don't have this. And so once there was someone, actually this is a Gelugpa master, a very well-known Gelugpa tulku. I'm not going to mention his name, but it was in the old days. So back in the old days, there was this very well-known master. And so he was talking, so when they were talking about it, he started debating people. He said, okay, so our teachings are the essence of the teaching. So it follows that before our teachings appeared, there was no essence of the teachings. The reason is because our teachings are the essence of the teachings. And so normally when we think about this, they didn't laugh.
It's okay. It's oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes, yeah.
Anyways, when we think about the distinctions between our tenets and between our Dharma lineages, then there are discrepancies in the words. But in actuality, they're all the practice, they're all the Buddhist teachings, and they're all the complete and full practice of the Buddhist teachings that was then summarized and wrapped up by the great masters and then presented to us like it's being put into our hands. It's like saying that we receive a Buddha in the palm of our hands. We have the entire teachings of the Buddha in our hands. And this is the way it is for all of the lineages. And so when we think about it, we actually really should rejoice about this and have confidence about this. But instead, we often think about it with a lot of with the afflictions of attachment and aversion. And so, actually, if we think about our own teachings as being the complete and perfect teachings of the Buddha, and if we think about that with attachment and aversion, then actually the reason why the teachings have been wrapped up and placed in our hands is that in order to subdue our afflictions. That is why they've been put in our hands. And yet, if instead of being a method to subdue our afflictions, they become the cause for our afflictions to increase, then we're finished. There's nothing we can do about it. And so it is very important for us to really consider this carefully.
다 어디 된다 간다 아주지 오늘 저녁에 가져다 시에바데 칸에 시에샤 집이 평가하고 나데 라랭무부터 내가 가지지 라랭다 토도는 따과데 계심으로 자대어 봐 시에만 딱 칸에 시에다 그나 예 가대어를 지든지 시에 아니 계란수지 가대어도 시에도 유기래 이베네야 딱 간다지 카데오디기 아주 된다래야 아니 교학에 주요 말에 제가 다 단도 양계지训练되어서 배낭 아주 남기 왕的古有的艰难的，现在是个艰难事，这边样个艰难事，这王的这一他们拉叔叔说个王的体的些了，听起来啊，现在是个，干嘛前面个在下边现在是个，这体就好了，叫我叫做，现在是叫我叫做体叫做。 다 디나로래야 안 맛이 가마 참여디 통계 심심지도 사게 거니 비 강갈로지 니 맛이 버사 매딩 다 강갈로 셰딩 다고 통계 지식에 다 들으시도 다 디나로 제레스 고 맛있다 제레스디 시부지 임바지 송도와 난권에 쇼다 제레스 경화자수디 안다 간다 직배 가져야 다 이름 군기라는 초도 교바 안데 루규소는 사다 야와자소들 잡아야 말았어. 다 이담 신다도 잡아야 알았어. 변 뒤기 콜로를 잡아야 알았어. 뒤기 콜로도 귀남다이 잡아야 알았어. 다안다나 신기 파 잡아야 알았어. 잡아야 망고시 송샤. 다디 제마티 망보다 따니쇼 삼골지 소이. 다 제레스도 마도 신다도 지 파지다 시라지 가르에 초르 메데니르지. 소마로 다지 간제집이나 상고하지 드리죠고 제상 참상 가서 내용 변에 제레스 왕고가 다 제레스 자침보다 니라 메시지 가지고 반 디시 잡지 왕고요 다 선인 잡아야 저 왕고는 양 다가는 시리 잡아야 한다 어떤 딜레 라가 메시지 양 다가랑 줍잖아 안데 드게스 다디 괜찮디 다 남주 수수수 이담 수수수수 이게 안다 배연선한 다도 체외연 되는 저연주사네 that Juguare, and the draw gas. That you mean a tigi, Jeres Jibu Kesha in Jaban Ketchmo Maraso. Jaban Kesha, Jeres Kesha, Tandoji, Jaban Kesha or Junzingi, Jeres Ketchmo Chandra. Jeres Ketcha, Junzingi, Jaban Ketcha, Ketchmo Chandra, Digiremado, Jeres Ketchmo in Jaban Ketchu Chandra, but no matter. Sangi Zewe and Dende, and Ketchmo child. and 캠페인 인데 안 대다 뒤송다 계셔버 지기 질리야다 가르쳐다지 지기 유엔된데 또 연도 지기 유엔된데 양포 가르쳐에 쇼래야 들려야지 당화기야를 지고로 제가 드리게 토네 가당아지 다 망부시 암시 다 드리지 되셔
So that's how it is. So just knowing something and being able to talk about it is not enough. We actually really need to be able to put it into practice. So sometimes actually just saying things, so it's easy for us to talk. It's easy for me to talk. It's easier for you all to talk. But just knowing it being easy to talk doesn't in actuality change us in any way. It's like when we get empowerments or initiations, like if you're going to get the empowerment of Avalokiteshvara or of Manjushri. Whatever Yidam deity, when we get the empowerments or the instructions on them, then they always say that they're the greatest deity. Well, I was once reading some instructions by Karma Chakme on Avalokiteshvara in the form of Gyawajatsu or Jinasagara. And when reading Karma Chakme, it sounded like, actually, he's the greatest of all sentient beings. Avalokiteshvara in the form of Gyawajatsu is the greatest, the most wonderful of all sentient beings. And one reason for this, Karma Chakma is saying, is that he was undisputed. There were never any disputes about Avalokiteshvara. There are disputes about all the other tantras. There are disputes about whether the Kala Chakra Tantra is real or not, but there are no disputes about Avalokiteshvara. And so when he's writing in this, he's really praising Avalokiteshvara very highly, and he had this feeling, oh, he's so supreme, like how can anyone else compare to this? And so, like when we give the empowerment of Avalokiteshvara, then we say, he's incredibly important. There's no one who's greater than that, no deity who's greater than this. And then the next day, the Guru gives the empowerment of Manjushri and says the same thing. There's no one who's greater than this. If you practice Manjushri alone, this is enough. So we have to understand that every Yidam deity has their own benefits, has their own particular qualities of greatness. And in this respect, they all are great. But it's not like we're saying that, only Avalokiteshvara is supreme and Manjushri is not, or that we're saying Manjushri alone is great and Avalokiteshvara is not. The reasons that make Manjushri great are also reasons why Avalokiteshvara is great. The reasons why Avalokiteshvara is great are also reasons why Manjushri are great. They're not any different. You can't really say one is greater than the other. When we talk about the qualities of the love, when we increase the qualities of the love of the Buddha, that also means that we're also increasing our qualities of wisdom and knowing. Realizing the meaning of one means that we realize the other, and realizing the meaning of one means that we should also develop faith in the other, and so we should not think of one as greater than the other. And so we have the turning the wheel of Dharma and the request not to pass into nirvana and the dedication. Then those are basically as written. I don't have enough energy to speak about them now, so we will leave it here. Now next, there have been a few people who have asked me to give the lung transmission for the aspiration for Mahamudra. So I will give that transmission now. So that completes the transmission of the aspiration for Mahamudra at the definitive meeting. So tomorrow we will have the Tomorrow we will have the Chö Puja, the all-day long Chö Puja, the string of jewels that was written by the Karmapa Rangjung Dorje.
나니가 아니 군주가 니마 타마를 치지 주메군 달래 대제메 군주 니마 타마 아니 쇼베 가면들 쇼베 집지 있으면서 다 하시 쟤네 너니도 스레.
And then the day after is the final day of the Arya Chema Winter Dharma Gathering. Actually, I think the schedule is free in the morning.
지지는 아주 여기다디 주메 다데 가서 대바게베 초 대바게베 초가디 대바게조디 지지는 다 가상우마 당부체비네 그 유만한 게니 타마들이야 제아체브레 다이네 다다 교화침이 인사 지지는 대지 작고지 대바게조디 선이 너니 쇼베 제거나 하고서만 다들이 야부지 하고 모두다 제를 아주 손수소지 다 잼 좀.
And so I think maybe the day after tomorrow in the morning we should do the ritual for the teachings, for the nuns' teaching to flourish. Actually, originally we thought of planned to do this on the last day of the Kaju Munlam, but we changed those plans. And so maybe it would be good to do this ritual for the teachings to flourish in the morning, the day after tomorrow.
아미세 지다리 지메고 저팅 소바데 아니 소도베 총한데 지차 가서 비숨서뱅안 아지 통답할수도 계획안 소도베 총한데 가브르샤 총소 안 제zan다 아주지 캘럽 한 긴류 넘버에 하나씩 주문 남수래 안에 다나지기 집에 답부주래 안 대신도 쓰기함이 마용 좋아래야 아니 예 닝타번에 도시셔요.
So I'm very happy that we've been able to hold this third Arya Chema Winter Dharma Gathering. It has been excellent from the beginning through the middle and until the end, and I'm very happy about this. And so for that reason, I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to all the Kempos and teachers, the Sangha members, the nuns, and the entire monastic and lay communities who are here.
다 아미세 슈하스게 메베 소시도 다 다다디 아주 주메기 될래야 다 달로르 차셔비네 저 아주 초지네 지 르람 다세 단들이 전에 에너지 셰베 롱게 대바 야외데 롱게 대바 진진용 베스음 차로 데 아주 베주지 셰브레 다 초지네 아주지 아네 좀쉐들이 소세 다지 라마자와 사다 잡을래야 아니 주베셔와 비베 토네 주바냠네 단 도나지 좀주 소화되 오늘은 냠네 제신 롱 똑베데 말와다 제자 제가 다지 롱도니 세난 장도 셰바도 주베세난 장도 야마제 거네 아니 야보로 총수 삼바로 도스테네도 아니 인주사는 마음발이미네 제티신 아지 시주 송제게 거네 에너지 템바 가슈다 야마제 버지 되지 무튀네 로도나 야만로섬도 정도 아시아만 상상 아주지야 셰바 칭에도 주바 칭에도 지라 마가체 주바 칭에도 셰바 칭에도 지라 마가체 군이 버올이야네 저바도 다디 냠네 셰마셰바 따르시와 퇴삼체야데 주바 체베 텐도 치가래 주바 요아체도 주바 체야체도 퇴삼체가 제자들이 인주산 군인이 지로지를 로아 샤오르마다 군인이 지지려베 잡셰를 차소나 되네 템바냐베 달라나마 집에 인주산 디균산데 안사메디 돌야 샤로나 수에
And so holding this gathering of the community of nuns, from one perspective, or one way of looking at it, it's primarily for study, for for upholding the teachings of Scripture and explanation. So this is the teachings of Scripture. And another way of looking at it, we've also had the offerings of practice. We've had the practice of making, we've had the pujas, the making offerings that please the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And if we really practice these, these are the teachings of realization, aren't they? So in this way, we have the teachings of Scripture and the teachings of realization, the teachings of explanation, the teachings of practice, and these are together and inseparable from each other. And so in this way, this is what we actually need to do. We need to practice with the teachings and with the teachings and the practice together in union, with them never separate, and that is the best way to practice. And so sometimes, we feel like if we should practice, if we do study, that we don't need to practice, or feel if we practice, we don't need to study. And it seems like there's some sort of a rivalry between the study and the practice. And if this happens, it's a sign that we do not really know how to practice. The reason or the purpose for our study is to be able to practice. And our practice is also in order to help us in our listening and contemplation, our study. These two work with each other; they help each other out. And so, if they become separated from each other, they will not work well. So it is important for us to keep this in mind. And so, as I mentioned before, this I don't feel comfortable that this teaching has turned out as well as I would have liked it to. And so once again, I would like to beg your pardon. I feel that this Dharma gathering turning out well is because of the compassion and blessings of all the victors and their children. It's because of the compassion and blessings of all the root and lineage lamas and the compassion and blessings of the Dharma protectors that it has gone well. I don't feel like there's any particular thing that I can say, oh, I did this or I did that and that made it do well. And I don't feel like there's anything I can do really in the future for it. I've been giving a very high title, and sometimes when you're giving a very high and impressive title, it's actually quite difficult. When you give an ordinary individual the name or the title of a Buddha or Bodhisattva, it's really difficult. You should think about how it'd be for yourselves. For yourselves, if you were all of a sudden given a very high title, how would it be for you? How difficult would it be for you? In any case, when I look at what I have done up till now, for the sake of beings or teachings, I really don't feel like I've been able to make 100% efforts. I've been maybe able to do some, maybe 30 or 40% efforts, but but I hope that in the future that that the Buddha's teachings in general and the benefit of all sentient beings, and in particular that particular for the community of nuns, that you will all develop the ability to become masters who are able to uphold, spread, and propagate the teachings of Scripture and practice. This is my hope and my prayer.